I was extubated on Christmas Eve, December 24th at around 7:30 a.m. And it was one of the greatest moments of my life. I was also absolutely terrified, though, because I was told by multiple members of my healthcare team that this moment of extubation would most likely not be possible for me after this kind of surgery. And so to be in that moment already less than 24 hours after the biggest surgery of my life, the biggest medical ordeal of my life, and here I am already exceeding their expectations and doing 10 times better than any of us ever expected me to do from a respiratory standpoint was unbelievable. A week in the pediatric ICU, it was time for me to go to the stable floor, and I was transferred there. After a week is when it was time for me to start weaning off the pain pump. I was still very heavily medicated due to discovering that it was discovered during my spinal fusion surgery that my pain receptors in my back do not function properly. So if you want to learn more about that, I explained that in the previous, segment of my spinal fusion experience. There was a crew of people to help me transfer to the stable floor. I had a lot of stuff. I was all by myself, so there was, like I said, a crew of people to help me gather all my stuff and take me to the stable floor. I was really glad that I was able to leave the ICU because that meant that I was doing well, and I shouldn't say doing well, but doing well under the circumstances. Pain management was still one of the biggest struggles due to, like I said, my pain receptors in my back not functioning properly. This was discovered during the surgery. I do not have this issue anywhere else in my body. I've had surgery on all my other extremities and have never had this issue. I was pretty nervous leaving the ICU because I knew that the pain management was going to change drastically because I was reaching the point where it was going to be no longer safe for me to be on the medications that I was on because they are so strong. There's a certain point that it's ideal that you're no longer on them. I was really upset that I was struggling so much with pain management because I knew that this surgery was going to be difficult as it was, and then find out that my body, parts of my body were not functioning properly to respond to the pain or even the pain management was really frustrating, and I don't like taking medication or pain medication especially. Just because it's not good on your body, it's obviously necessary sometimes, and I'm not shaming anyone that has to use that as a tool. I'm a girl that's had over 100 fractures. I mean, obviously that's a big tool in my toolbox, but ongoing is not something that I ever need or like to do or need, and so that was a really frustrating part of the process. But I knew for the safety of all the other functions in my body that they were doing what they had to do by slowly taking me off of these really strong medications. So I made it to the stable floor. Once I got to that floor, it felt like I was just there because in July of 2020, I had a revision mastectomy, mastectomy. I had a little bit of a complication unexpectedly after that surgery. My breathing was really abnormal. I thought my lung had collapsed, but it didn't. During the revision mastectomy surgery, the anesthesiologist had given me a medication because my heart rate was kind of fast, but this anesthesiologist must have not known me well because my heart rate is only the rate that it was during the surgery, and this medication that I had never been given this during surgery before, and this medication, I guess, has a side effect where it can make your breathing kind of weird, and so I was experiencing that, and so I stayed overnight after that surgery, just one night, to make sure my breathing was alright. And so it was really weird to be back on that floor. I felt like I was just there. This was for a much happier reason. I wasn't on the floor due to complication. It wasn't a major complication by any means. I did an update video on that when that happened. I got settled in on the floor. I was brought to that floor, to that unit, early evenings. Another goal that they had for me is I really needed to work on eating. I don't remember if I touched on this in my other segments of my spinal fusion experience, but when I'm in a lot of pain, I do not eat. It just really affects my appetite, like in a big way. My stomach feels like I'm going to throw up when I'm in an extreme amount of pain. And for like 2 or 3 days, immediately after my spinal fusion, when I was in ICU, I was on a pump of, I don't know, there's probably a medical term for this, but just basically a bag of sugar water, because I couldn't eat. I would throw up because I was just in so much pain, and they couldn't get my pain under control, and that greatly impacted my appetite. And so once I got to the stable floor, and by the time I left ICU, I was starting to eat a little bit, but not, compared to what I normally eat. By the time I got up to that floor, I lost a couple of pounds, no more than a couple of pounds, but for me, obviously, that's not good, and it's not a healthy way to lose weight. I was obviously not trying to lose weight, but it just happened because of the extreme circumstances that I was in. And so that was another goal, was they really wanted me to eat, and so I tried my best and ate, and it got better as the days went on, but that was just another part of the process, and something that I had to work on before I could go home was obviously eating and making sure that it stayed down, if you know what I mean. Just getting my strength back, because especially when my surgeon explained to me, especially when you have a spinal fusion surgery, your body is constantly working to heal, and so even though I'm not moving, my body's burning a lot of calories to heal, because it's such a big surgery and my spine has been completely transformed. And so, like I said, even though I wasn't getting any amount of physical activity, my body was still burning calories. And if you lose too much weight, it's going to take fat from muscles, and that's not good. So getting calories in me was really important, and so that was something that I was working on when I was on the floor, just trying to eat and get any little bit of calories in me that I could. I was still on the bag of sugar water for a few days after I got on the stable unit, because part of the pressure for me too with eating is because I was still in so much pain, and my pain was still not regulated well. There's the pressure of like, I have to eat. And because I'm so small, if I go a long time without eating, my blood sugar crashes, and so I get really shaky and weak, and just all these, and then I start to feel not hungry because I'm not feeling well, because my blood sugar's low, but my blood sugar's low because I need to eat, and so it's just this vicious cycle. So they kept me on the bag of sugar water for a while, so that I could work on eating, but be able to do it slowly, so that at kind of my own pace, so that I didn't have to worry about my blood sugar crashing, because if you've never dealt with a blood sugar crash, it does not feel good when your blood sugar starts crashing. And so that took away a lot of the stress for me too. So I just kind of got settled on the stable unit, not really much change. Just again, working on pain management and eating were the two biggest reasons that I was still inpatient, mainly pain management at this point. And so, but again, we had to work on getting me off the pain pump. And so that happened the night that I got onto that unit. Was they weaned down the pain pump. That was the thing that they did. I was not taken completely off the pain pump. You can't do that super fast. You can suffer withdrawals. Like, I wasn't on it a long enough time to really suffer withdrawals had they just taken, but it's not ideal to do that, and so that's why they do it slowly, and so that's kind of what I did. Those were my days, pretty much consisted of the same. I started getting up in my wheelchair more. I forgot if I mentioned this or not, but I did get up in my wheelchair while I was in the pediatric ICU. I got up 3 days after, I think, my spinal fusion surgery, 3 days. The first day was only like for 5 minutes, 2 minutes if that, very quick, and then they made me, you know, increase it every day. I had a physical therapist come in when I would get in my wheelchair and just work on that and building up the strength. You would think sitting in a chair is not that much work, but it's a lot when you've been through a 10-hour surgery where your body has been completely reshaped, essentially. And so I remember the first time that I got up, I felt just a little bit dizzy and like lightheaded, but that's normal. I had oxygen on, and first while that I got up, and it took quite a bit of people to transfer me the first couple of times, just because I had my IV pumps and just all my different pumps, and then one to carry me and put me in the chair, and so it was quite the process. I don't really remember the first time that I got up in the ICU the first time. I remember it, but it was I think I do. I think I have a picture. Yes, I have a picture, so I'll insert that here. Total hospital status, like hospital hair, the whole thing. I did it, and I got up. That was while I was still in ICU. So anyways, my days in the stable unit, again, pain management and eating were our biggest hurdles. It was really nice being on the stable unit because there was more opportunities for interaction. Like, they have a music therapist and an art therapist, which was so incredible. They were absolutely amazing. The art therapist, it was such a cool bond that we formed. She was so nice, and we just were chatting one day. I made a bracelet of like the scoliosis colors and the colors of my scoliosis awareness logo, and we just hung out to know each other, and she was so kind, and it was so nice having that interaction because, like I said, I was not allowed to have consistent visitors. That was like my moment of interaction with someone. And all my other nurses were amazing as well, but they didn't really have time all the time to like sit and hang out and spend time with me. My night nurses did more than my day nurses, but still, like, you know, it was just a really awesome relationship that we formed, and it was really cool because, like, she'd asked me, I'd been there, and at the time it was about a week that I had been there, just over a week that I had been there, and I told her, you know, I just got out of ICU, blah, 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 and was asking about her, like, getting to know her and what she does and where she's from, and she said, oh, I'm from blah, 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 and I was like, no way. And she looked at me and she stopped and she was like, yeah, what? And I was like, that's where I live. Like, she's from where I currently live, and her parents still live here, and it's just so cool. So we were talking about all the things that have changed in this town since she's lived here, and all the things that are still the same, and it was really cool. It was like this instant bond, even though we'd never met each other when she lived here, or even knew she existed, never met each other, but it was just this really cool instant bond that we got to talk about and had this really big commonality, and it was just really cool, like such a small world. And she came to visit me like almost every day, or every day that she was there, and we would hang out and just do art, or sometimes if I was having a really hard day in terms of pain, I really couldn't sit up and like do art, so she would just sit and like chat with me, which was like so cool because, like I said, I was restricted from visitors, and so that really meant a lot to me. And I still wish that I had a way to keep in touch with her and just thank her for the impact that she had on me during that time, during those rough times. And then they also have a music therapist, and my music therapist was absolutely incredible. She was so kind, and she plays guitar, and guitar is one of my favorite instruments. I don't play guitar. I'm not musically interested as far as learning how to play, but I love the sound of guitar. And she would come in and play the guitar for me, and again, just like sit and chat with me. And there was one day that she came, and I was having a really hard day. This was actually after my second surgery, so I'm skipping around a little bit here, but the one day she was there, asked me what kind of music I like to listen to, and I was like, I know this isn't everybody's thing, but I like to listen to Christian music. I respect everybody's opinion. God gives us the free will to believe in Him or not, and so why would I not expect that from other people? I wanted to be honest with her, like that's what I listen to. I don't listen to pop music or rap music or country music or whatever. Like, I listen to Christian music, and it was really cool because I think she is a believer as well. She was like, oh, like, do you listen to Casting Crowns? And I said, oh my gosh, like, they're one of my favorites. And so she played a Casting Crowns song for me on the guitar, and sang as well. And it was just really awesome that God had brought her and that she happened to be a believer, because the hospital cares for a population from all over the state. So all kinds of different minorities and beliefs and groups of people, and so you never know. Not everybody believes in God. It's not for me to judge, but it's really cool when God brings those people together. And it was just this really cool, like, I don't know, I could just feel His presence in the room, and just really special. I wanted to talk about those two young women before I get into kind of messy parts next. Also involved in a good way in the weeks to come of my stay, but I wanted to be sure to mention them in the beginning because they were such a huge part of my stay once I got to the stable floor, because I got to have some activity during the day and just have some things to look forward to and some social interaction that didn't involve FaceTime, so that was really awesome. Kind of is now leading up to, I had a second spinal surgery, and I'm gonna talk about the second surgery itself in the next segment of my spinal fusion experience, but I want to talk about what led up to this, because I hope that this can help another patient, or if you ever find yourself in a similar position. I hope you don't, but I hear this kind of thing all too well, all too often, and so I want to help you be able to navigate this. After I had gotten onto the stable unit, I just started feeling really weird. Like, all throughout my body, just started feeling really weird. I started slowly losing feeling. I think it was my hands and leg first. It just didn't feel right when the art therapist was there. Like, I was trying to do the beading, and like I couldn't, because I actually was doing it, but I had to have a lot of effort to like move my fingers. My hand just felt really like, I had full function of it, but it just felt really weak, and I couldn't like feel the beads too well, and just had a really hard time doing those intricate tasks. This slowly started increasing over time, which I'll get to. I first started losing feeling in my hands and in my legs, and then it slowly kind of went into my arms a little bit. My arms weren't really as affected, if at all, really, more than like my hands and my leg, my right foot. So I told my team, because obviously like that's pretty scary, not normal, because as I mentioned time and time again, one of the risks of the surgery is becoming paralyzed. But if I were to become paralyzed from the surgery, it would have happened during the surgery, not a week later. That's how I knew that this was really odd, because like I said, it was a week ago that I had had my spinal surgery at this point, and so I didn't know what could possibly be going on. They thought it was one of the pain medications, because I guess it can cause like some tingling and numbness. I'd been on this medication before, and I'd never had that side effect, and obviously side effects can come up at any time, and you can develop new allergies to things. So I didn't totally toss it out of possibilities, but you know when you just have that gut feeling, I talk about the gut feeling a lot. Your gut feeling is your friend, and it protects you, and it tells you a lot of things, and most of the time, I would say pretty much all the time, it's right. Also, at this point, I didn't see my surgeon every day, so when I say like my team, I'm talking like I mostly saw the residents, because obviously my surgeon was operating on other people and seeing patients in clinic, and so she can't be at my calling 24/7. Obviously they would call her and talk to her when issues like this would arise, but like seeing her in person, I would only see her every so many days, because obviously I'm not her only patient. And so they were like, oh, it's probably from this pain medication. And I'm like, okay, but like I've been on this for over a week now, and like why would it just randomly start, you know? And also, like I said, I'd been on this medication before and never had this issue. I believe they tried to stop the medication or like lower it or something. It didn't work. Like it wasn't more pain, and B, it didn't take away the feeling in my body and the loss of feeling in my legs and in my hands. So that was really odd to me. And they weren't too worried about it either, because they said I had, you know, I've been laying in bed a lot, you know, just had spinal surgery, so sometimes like the nerves can kind of, I don't know, like, you know, I'm heavily medicated, so like the exact words of what they said of some things are, I can't really remember, but it's something like the movement or lack of movement, or because I was, you know, laying on the operating table for 10 hours, literally not moving a muscle. And so when you're putting all that pressure in one area, it can damage the nerves. That's not like them just pulling something out of a hat. Like, that really is a thing, and I looked into it and everything. So internally, I was kind of scared, but I was like, okay, like, you're right. I was laying, you know, on that operating table for 10 hours and moving, and that can affect a lot of things. And I've been on a lot of medications. My body had been through a lot, and so I wasn't like too whatever on the first day, you know, like too, I mean, like I was concerned about it because it's scary, but you know, I was like, okay, like this is what they're telling me, and they were like checking me over, and like I said, I remained, throughout this whole time, I remained full function of everything. Like I never lost total function. I started to just a little bit towards the end, which I'll share, because there's like different neuro tests that they have you do when you say that you, especially when you just recently had surgery near your spinal cord, there's different tests that they'll have you do when you say, like, I can't feel my arms or my legs or whatever it is. And I passed all those tests because, like I said, I remained at full function for the most. So several days, well, not several, a couple of days go by, and I still just, like, don't feel right. I'm having to have a lot of effort, like, moving my legs and feeling weak, and just my limbs felt really weak, and I was starting to lose more feeling in my legs and in my hands, and this feeling started to increase. And I remember this one morning, the residents made their rounds. There's a reason that becoming a doctor takes so long, and that's because there's a lot to learn. And as you will hear from my story, you'll learn that as well. And so the residents make their rounds, and I'm kind of getting frustrated at this point because I don't think the residents are communicating to my surgeon what I'm feeling, telling them the magnitude at what I'm feeling, and come to find out that was the case. They were not communicating this to my surgeon. They make their rounds one morning, and it was particularly bad this morning, and I said, look, I can't feel my arms and legs, my hands and legs, and increasing every day. I know it's not the medication. Something is wrong. The guy basically told me, like, not to worry about it, like, it's going to take time, like, nerves are funny things, and it's going to take time, but it will come back because I remained full function of everything and passed all these tests, and, you know, was not able to, like, move. He was like, it's going to come back, like, I promise, like, don't be anxious about it. And I don't know if these were exact words, like, don't be anxious about it, but I'm just saying, like, it was along those lines. And finally, I'm, like, fed up because I can't even begin to tell you how frightening it is to slowly lose feeling in your legs and feet and hands, increase every day. It was almost like I was slowly becoming paralyzed. Like, that's what it wasn't that to the severity, but it increased every day. And it's not normal to just slowly lose feeling in your extremities for no reason. And like I said, I know there's a risk of becoming paralyzed with the surgery, but if I were to become paralyzed, it would have happened during the surgery, not a week later. That just doesn't happen with this kind of surgery. And so I was like, what do I possibly do? Like, these residents were really dismissing the magnitude of what I was feeling. And I was like really, really angry because I knew that something wasn't being communicated, because I knew that once my surgeon, my surgeons, my team, like my core team, not residents, not fellows, like my actual doctors, once they learned what I was feeling, I knew that they would know that this isn't normal, and that, like, they know that I know me best. And I just couldn't imagine that them of all people, after what I just went through, dismiss this feeling. And they come, the residents come at like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., something like that, and so I couldn't do anything about it until like 9 or 10 o'clock. What do I do? Like, how do I get listened to me? Because I was kind of getting frustrated, because I remember telling them, like, I feel like missing something. I feel like we're not checking something. We're missing something. Like, what I know is this doesn't feel right, and something is wrong. And they just didn't seem worried about it. I didn't want them to go in a full-fledged panic. Like, obviously they're medical professionals, but if a patient tells you that, and your doctor or resident or fellow, whatever, and your patient tells you, I can't feel my hands or my legs or my feet, and it's increasing every day, I'm not a doctor, but I am pretty medically savvy with everything that I've gone through, and to me that seems like pretty urgent or pretty important. And I was like, what do I do? And so I knew that this was not protocol for, or maybe, quote, like, appropriate, because communication between patient and doctor when you're inpatient happens with whoever the doctor is on the floor that day, if that makes sense. And then they communicate it to the patient's surgeon or doctor or whatever. I am calling my team myself. So this is really unusual. Doctors do not normally receive calls from patients when they're inpatient. It's just not a thing that a patient ever does or ever really needs to do, because that's why they're inpatient. They're receiving care 24/7 from, like, a team, a doctor, like, someone is always there. And I remember, like, calling the nurse that I'm really close with there, and I was like, hey, like, I'm, like, almost in tears at this point, because I'm just so frustrated that, like, these residents just dismissed what I was saying, essentially, and not doing tests or anything to figure out what was going on. And so I said, hey, this is Michaela. I know this is really weird because I'm still inpatient, but I'm calling you right now because I don't know if you guys know or if they have told you, for the past, like, several days, I have not been able to feel my legs or my hands, my feet, and it's increasing every day. The residents don't seem to be worried about it, but they're telling me that they've communicated that with you and to doctor, you know, all this and that. I said, do you guys know anything about this? Like, has she said anything, like, what I should do? Because the residents don't seem to be worried about this, but, like, I can't feel my extremities, and I just had surgery near my spinal cord, so, like, this seems pretty urgent and, like, pretty important, and I'm, like, really frustrated that no one is listening to me. And she just kind of paused and was like, oh my gosh, like, no, we received no communication of that. And my jaw just, like, dropped, and she, like, got a hold of my surgeon, like, immediately, and was like, Michaela's on the phone, like, she's saying she can't feel her arms and legs and hands, and do you not, like, I haven't heard you say anything about that. Like, did the residents tell you, or the team that's been seeing Michaela on the floor, like, have they asked you about this or opinion? And she was like, no, like, we need to get the neurosurgeon up there right now, the neurosurgeon that assisted in my spinal fusion. He is incredible. And so I was like, jaw dropped that they had no idea. The residents never told her that I lost feeling in my arms and legs. Within 45 minutes. The neurosurgeon was up there after I made the call to my orthopedic who did the surgery. Within 45 minutes, she got the neurosurgeon up to my room, and people on the floor were probably like, oh my gosh, because they probably didn't like that I called them, or called my surgeon and basically told them out what they were lacking. But he thoroughly examined me, and just to see him was a breath of fresh air. Like, I almost cried when I saw him, because he's the top pediatric neurosurgeon at this hospital, and he sees all of the things, and I knew that, like, if I couldn't feel my arms and legs, like, he knows how bad that is, and because he sees it all. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, like, thank you, like, I'm starting to feel crazy, like, no one is listening to me. He's like, no, like, I can't believe they didn't tell us, and blah, blah, blah. So he did a thorough examination. Like, I had to do all these different things, like, and he would do, like, all these touch points, like, can you feel this? Can you feel this? And then I would say, like, no, or yes, or a little bit, or most of my time it was no, especially in my leg. He was pretty concerned about that. So he definitely knew that something was going on, because there were things and areas of my body that he was touching, and I knew he was touching them because I could see him touching it, but if I had my eyes closed and he was touching, like, I couldn't, like, I had no idea that he was doing that. That was pretty concerning to him, and within the hour that night, I ended up going for an emergency MRI. That was quite the ordeal. It was just so relieving to go to this test, because it would begin to tell you again how scary it is to slowly lose feeling in your body, in your extremities, and to be totally dismissed by residents, and to have this information not communicated to your surgeons that just performed a life-saving surgery on you is really, really, really bad. They felt totally awful. And I was like, well, how are you supposed to know if they didn't tell you, right? And I'm just so glad I called, because I just keep thinking about, like, what if I had listened to them and then I had went home and lost feeling and just waited for it to come back. Like, I could have had permanent permanent damage at this. Within the hour that night, I went for an MRI. It was pretty late in the night when I had this done. It was so relieving that when I finally told my team, because, I mean, they just acted so fast, like I said. Top pediatric neurosurgeon, and when you tell him you can't feel your extremities, that's a huge red flag for him, and he's just so brilliant and so knowledgeable. And so I knew that no matter what they'd find, if whatever was going on, he and my orthopedic surgeon would be the ones to find. But I just can't even begin to tell you how it feels to be told so many times by people and be dismissed that you're okay when you know you're not. And I wanted so badly, like, I was just, like, crying on the way to the MRI, because I'm like, what if they don't find anything? Like, what if, if they don't find anything? Like, what is going on? I was just tired at that point, because for several days prior, I was telling these residents that I couldn't feel my extremities, and I had to wait until it got this bad for me to actually, I guess I should have called my team to begin with, but they communicated to me that they acted like they told them. Although now that I think back, they never really said anything specific about what my surgeon said in response to all this. Because, like, usually if something was communicated to her, they would say, like, oh, Dr. So-and-so said that she thinks it's this, or, but they never said that. Like, they just said, like, we think, or this is what it is. Like, they kind of took it upon themselves instead of asking my surgeon, who knows me best. So in hindsight, I guess I didn't realize that till now. So I went for the MRI. It was a really, really long MRI. It was like an hour and a half. They did a very extensive MRI. It was part with contrast and part without contrast. They did all the way down. They did my cervical spine all the way down to my lumbar spine. They went all the way down, even the areas that I was not fused. And like I said, they even did my neck, my cervical spine. So it was a very extensive MRI. They had got a transport team for me to take me to my MRI. And it was really cool, because the people that did my MRI and that transported me for my MRI, I knew from camp. Just really cool. Like, all these different areas of the stay, like, God had just given me and guided me to all these people to make this horrifying experience. A little bit better and a little bit brighter. I have really bad anxiety when it comes to MRIs and just imaging type testing. I just guided me and gave me all these great and familiar people and so understanding, and the MRI went perfect. When you're told that you can't feel your extremity, they move you like pretty carefully once they find that out. You know, depending on what's going on, they don't want to further damage anything, so they made sure to just move me very carefully. After about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I got back to my room. I had never had an emergency MRI before. It was going to be a couple of hours till we got the results, even though my surgeon put it on stat. MRIs are pretty complex, especially the ones that I had, so it was going to take a while to get the readings back. And I was like, if it's something really bad, like, will they come tell me, or will they wait till like rounds the next day? Like I said, it's the paralysis type feeling was getting pretty bad at this point, so it was getting like just very scary. I was like, if it's something really bad, will they tell me, or will they wait till rounds? And they said, no, like, someone will come and tell you what's going on if it's something really bad. I'm like, okay, so you never want to hope that's the case, because even if it is something wrong, you don't want it to be urgent enough to where someone comes and finds you after hours. At 4 in the morning, I woke up to my neurosurgeon at my bedside. It had woken me up. Like, fine now, but like, man, I could just like, it gives me chills. It gives me chills because it was really scary. So he's just like incredible and like such a hero of mine. And so he wakes me up at 4 in the morning and he's like, Michaela, it's Dr. So-and-so and I'm here. And I'm like, oh no. Like, it's pitch dark outside. And he's like, I'm here. And so I'm like, oh no. Like, I knew immediately that it was bad. I'm like half awake, like half out of it. And he's like touching like my leg and my arm again and like having me do these things. He's like asking me these questions and having me move certain ways and like, how does this feel, or like, can you feel this? And I would say yes or no, or mostly no. And like, he kind of had to like get me to like come to a little bit. I barely remember anything he said because I was like in such a deep sleep when he had come. It was 4 in the morning when he came. He said, well, we found something on your MRI. Results came back that you might have some fluid buildup, like going up into your neck, like into your cervical spine, causing pressure and causing this paralysis. And so I'm like, what? Like, where did that come from? He's like, I just got out of the emergency, or I just got out of the operating room doing emergency surgery. I haven't had a chance. Wanted me to get up here because if it is whatever this was, I would have had to go into emergency surgery to have an emergency cervical fusion. So I was fused from my thoracic spine, I don't know how you say it, to my lumbar spine, my T1 through L5, but I'm not fused in my neck. I don't need it, didn't need it, but whatever was going on, this fluid buildup, something was like, they said was like going up my neck, something like some abnormality with like fluid moving upward into my, I don't know. I was like, mind you, it's 4 in the morning, I was just in a deep sleep, and he's telling me that I might have to have emergency surgery. And so they called my orthopedic surgeon from home at like 4 a.m. and so she comes, and like, he didn't get a chance to go to see the MRI before he saw me because they just wanted him to get to me to check me, I guess. I don't know what this diagnosis was called, I forgot. I was, again, in a deep, not really coherent, but I mean, like, I remember him being there, but oh my gosh, like, I'd never had emergency surgery in my life. Like, I'm gonna go check the MRI, and if it's this, then we have to go now and do the surgery. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't know what made it emergent. I don't, like, why we couldn't at least wait till, like, normal morning hours? But I was like, okay, like, he's like, I'm gonna go check it, but they wanted me to get you to check. So they called my orthopedic surgeon and from home because if I needed this cervical fusion because of my OI, like, she needed to be part of it too. I wanted to be part of it too to make sure I'm safe. And a little while later, he comes back and he's like, okay, it's not this fluid moving up into your neck. You don't need emergency surgery. Put on NPO. Like, as soon as he came, I was put on NPO because I thought, again, that I was going to need emergency surgery, and so they stopped my fluid bag and all these different things. So he came back and he said, it's not this fluid thing, you don't need emergency surgery, but there is still something like this weird spot in your upper spine that we need to check. It's a little blurry, but so we're gonna need you to do a CAT scan. So it's like 6 a.m. at this point, and they're like, we got a CT scheduled for you at 8 o'clock. And so I'm like, okay. So I go for an emergency CAT scan. A lot of scans. So I go for 8 a.m. I'm still on PO. I hadn't slept now because how are you supposed to go back to sleep after being told you might have to go to emergency surgery and have a neck fusion and all these scary things. And I have the CAT scan, they read it, and it turned out that was one of the pieces of hardware had migrated and was out of my spine and had rotated and was touching an area of nerves that was obviously causing me some paralysis. We finally got the answer. I just couldn't help but smile because my advocacy paid off. I knew to call my surgeons myself because when my surgeons came in to tell me the news, there were some residents with her, and one of the residents that told me not to worry about this feeling several days ago was in the room to tell me that I was not okay and that I needed surgery again. I hope that that was a learning lesson for this resident to listen to the patient more. Not that I'm glad something was wrong, but I obviously am because I knew something wasn't right. And just to have that validation and know that I wasn't going crazy because for so many days I was told by these people, not my surgeons, but these residents, that I was fine and I wasn't fine. And I can't even begin to tell you what that feels like and how much different my life would be if I would have listened to them and had like permanent nerve damage potentially. When I found out this was all in a matter of 24 hours, that I had seen my neurosurgeon like late in the evening, afternoon, had the 2 scans, got woken up at 4 a.m. I might have to have emergency surgery, then no, and then he viewed the images and needed the CT scan to get a better look, and then that's when they found the loose migrated piece of hardware. And this was only a week after my 10-hour surgery, and these risks that we had celebrated of me not becoming paralyzed and not needing a tracheostomy were once again faced before me as I prepared to have to have another surgery again. So the surgery did not happen that day because I was safe. My spinal cord was not damaged. They could tell from all the images my spinal cord was not damaged, and I was safe. And there's a reason that we had to wait a couple of days to have the surgery. This video is already incredibly long, but I'm going to end this part of the segment here, and then the next video that you'll see is when the continuation of the conversation between my surgeon, for delivering again the news to me. You guys know she came in and told me what had happened, but kind of how we were going to schedule this and why this needed to be done at a certain day and time and what needed to be done to have this surgery happen again. It was a whirlwind. This was one of the scariest moments of that stay, of losing feeling, you know, in my hands and in my legs, and it getting worse and being told that, like, not to worry. And I had to be, I shouldn't have had to call my surgeons. And my surgeons felt really bad too because they're like, you should not have had to do that, and I'm sorry. They failed you, essentially. In the next segment, you'll hear what happens and how I go into surgery again. And impossible became possible twice. But I was also so terrified because I was so relieved that I didn't have all the worst case scenarios. But all these risks were faced once again before me because my scoliosis is still really severe and spinal surgery is still just as risky for me the second time as it was the first time. But I knew I had to do it. Obviously, I was becoming, I had some paralysis in areas of my body, so it was non-negotiable here how my team made this happen and all the moving parts. It was pretty crazy. I will share with you guys what happens next. It was a whirlwind, but this goes to show that if a doctor or resident ever dismisses you, keep advocating because you know your body best and nobody knows you better. I'm just so grateful for my surgeons that that took my call, even though it was a little weird that I was inpatient, and they listened to me, and literally within 45 minutes my neurosurgeon was there just after I made the call. Like, why couldn't the residents have done that? So it just goes to show, like, how important it is for you to advocate and know your body best. Be vocal and just don't give up, and be persistent when you know something isn't right, because I'm living proof of that during this experience. So it gets even a little more eventful here in the next segment. But obviously it turned out, again, God gave me a second miracle, and I'm just filled with joy whenever I get to share these parts of the segments with you of my spinal fusion experience, because the story of these 28 days are just a miracle of God's faithfulness and the power of prayer. And so I can't thank you guys enough for watching this video. I know these videos are long, but these days of my lives were so important to me, and I want to be sure to share them with you. One thing I did not talk about in this segment is before my surgery. Actually, it worked out because I forgot this night did happen like 2 days before my surgery again. So I didn't skip over. I thought I skipped over an important part, but I forgot it happened like 2 days before my surgery, my second surgery. So I'll get into that, but the night that really transformed my life and was the worst night of my life and the most physical pain I'd ever felt, besides getting a screw pierced in my head while awake. There's just so much more to the story, and these videos are so long, and I apologize. So I hope it's okay that I'm splitting these segments up. I know it can be a little hard to follow, but be sure to check out the playlist, and I'll continue the story of God's continuing miracles for me, even during this incredibly scary time.